to Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast presented by Zwift for UAE Tour Stage 7, the final stage, the recap, the showdown on Jebel Hafeet. We will have the Kern of Brussels Kern, some form of recap, maybe next week at some point, as well as a Fawn Ardèche, as well as what other races are on? Is that it? There might be other races on. Tour of Rwanda, some maybe a roundup, and a Strade preview as well before I hop on the plane. So lots to look forward to, but this stage was all about, could Remco defend GC? Who would try and leap onto the podium? It's a hockey stick stage, 154 Ks. The climb is 10.7 Ks, 6.8%, although that includes like false flat in the middle. Actually, I think they kind of don't count the end. It's a bit longer than that. There's a steep 10% K, about 5-6 Ks in, and then some Ks are not as steep. It's a wide highway. It's before the stage. Remco was in a 9-second GC lead ahead of Plapp, 13 seconds ahead of Bilbao, and Adam Ricardo Yates was a minute plus behind. Why, Benji, did they have Yates' middle name in every graphic, but they don't for any other rider?
That's a very good question. Maybe it's like a request from the rider, because we have the same with Philip Yates, right? The other one. So
yes,
it's some
Philippe.
ongoing Yates thing, I feel like. Maybe it's a British thing, but we don't have it. Well, did we have it for Christopher Clive at some point, Froome? I remember seeing it at some point on screen. But anyway, those names are pretty fantastic. I won't complain about the Ricciardo and Philip memes.
I think the reason I say Ricardo and Felipe is because the only other riders that have that are the Spanish riders who have the double surname, like Enric Mas Nicolau, and none of the other like Anglo riders have the double. So yeah, that's a curiosity of the stage. We had our boy Welsford in the break. The fact that he didn't win this stage, a little bit disappointing. From the breakaway, thought he'd have it. You know what? They had 90 seconds at the base. Plenty of time. Hessman there. Who else is in the break with them?
Ballerstedt was in the break, and Jaakko Hanninen. Ballerstedt is now not anymore at Jumbo Dev Team, but at Alpecin, I think. I think he was at Jumbo back in the day. Hessman is still at Jumbo and does actually play a role in the final of this race, even though it's not the biggest role. So remember Michel Hessman in the breakaway. Now, we knew that this race was all going to be about Jebel Hafeet, the final climb. And it's not the easy climb like Jebel Jaiz was. It's a harder climb. It's harder percentages, but draft still matters on this climb. And you've got this finish where last year and the year before, we've already spoken about it being steeper from 3 kilometers to go to like 1 kilometer to go. And then it kind of has a descent kicking into the finish line. So if someone wants to drop someone, they have to do it earlier than in the final sprint. Otherwise, they're going to be sprinting against the other rider. Anyway, towards the climb, we knew the situation in GC. We knew that Yates had to do something to get onto the podium or win the stage, depending on what he seemed to be possible at the start of today's stage. Did they think, oh, we can't get to the victory in GC anymore, just go for the stage? That's a possibility. And then Emco is just defending. Same with Plapp, same with Bilbao. And I never really considered any other rider that is outside of those four still as an attacking possibility on this stage, because Yates was the best attacker in the ones on a minute anyway, right?
Yeah, I didn't really, to be honest, Poles, Taberi, I don't know if you can do a Zabeldia in a 1 week race, but I honestly didn't see them on camera once this week, except for crossing the line here, securing their top 10 in GC. So yeah, I didn't really think of Koos for the stage. Yeah. I thought it'd be a tough ask to beat Yates, and because Yates just wouldn't give him any freedom. It's not like Yates, if he's fighting with Remco on GC, they let a Koos go. That's never happening with Yates. He said their goal was to win the stage today on Jebel Hafeet. UAE's won the last 2 years with Pog, both GC and this stage. Pog has usually entered this stage in the GC lead and then a narrow lead often, and then sat on the wheel of Yates and won the sprint, with Yates unable to drop him. So we were curious to see, would Remco do the same strategy as Pogačar on Jebel Hafeet against Adam Yates, who's really good at this climb. Anyway, drag racing to the bottom. Quick Step start launching at Benji. Before Uh, like UAE even. I thought Bjerg was going to drive it from the bottom. Quick step. I was surprised. I guess were they just going to use Cherney or whoever before, or Seri before they can't do anything?
Was it the biggest lead out though? I feel like it were like the domestiques that you don't expect to make it far on the climb, if that makes any sense, that were doing the work for Quickstep at that point. Maybe it was some kind of like showboating against UAE of like, oh, we're still here. Whatever you do now won't matter. Remco's going to survive. Maybe that's kind of like a mental game they were playing with the riders that won't necessarily matter in the final segment of the Jebel Hafid when the real big hitters decide to make moves. And Bjerg did come around. I think it was with roughly 8.59 kilometers to go, so still relatively early on Jebel Hafid, that Bjerg came around and went to first position. And I think Soler was in his wheel, McNulty was in his wheel, but you're right. Quickstep stayed up there with like a 2-3 man train ahead of Remco, kind of next to the UAE train, but not at the front, like just behind them, like second row. So they still were supporting Remco quite well. But honestly, I didn't expect any Quickstep rider to survive the second that UAE started hammering it, because let's be honest about it, UAE needs to launch Yates here.
The only rider that might, if he used the Zwift hub, would be Mauri van Sevenant, but he was in. Isn't it weird that he was at Oman, came second or third on GC, won on Green Mountain, and he's not stayed an extra week in the Middle East to then be a climbing domestique for Remco? Kind of curious to me. I don't know what other goals he's preparing for. If he was, did he run for Nadesh yesterday? I mean, Remco's doing them too.
He's doing Strade, Settimana, Insulia, Brabantse Flash.
Okay, fair enough. I think maybe he's getting a lot of leadership. Anyway, before we get into the big action on the climb, there's Zwift news as well. There is Chasing Cancellara launched, a multi-stage event where you can test your mettle against time trial legend Fabian Cancellara, who's also the team principal of Tudor Pro Cycling Team, who are in this race actually, and Arvid Decline's got some decent results for them. I don't know, like how involved he is. Like, is he Jens Haugland day to day or just the figurehead? I don't know. But another big thing from Zwift dropping this month is the new referral program. You can get your friends and yourself 30 days free with your unique link when they subscribe to Zwift. You can earn up to 5 free months per year. So if you share the Zwift love, get your friends jumping in and jumping on Zwift. You can both ride with them, which is fun as always, but also save yourself some cash. It's a win-win. Thanks to Zwift, as always, for supporting the show, and I can't wait to jump back on when I get off the flight, because it's minus 10 degrees at my house, which it's supposed to be spring in 3 days. So that's just a lie. I've been lied to. Anyway, McNulty launching, good pull from him. It was Langen, backs, don't know which, Soler, McNulty, and then Adam Ricardo launches. We all knew it was coming. Right, no one really dropped of note. Tarling was good.
It was a typical Yates move though, right? It was a typical Yates move where it's not like the all-out attack. It's the kind of move where he ups the tempo a bit. He ups the tempo a bit of an extra punch to see who can still follow. And there's only 2 riders that's actually properly in his wheel anymore. Because while the pulls of McNulty and Sefov were doing damage, Glog was off the back. Bilbao had a moment where he was off the back because the rider ahead of him was dropping off. I think it was Rubio, and then Bilbao called back on. But when Yates actually went, it was 2 riders following. Remco Evenepoel, the leader in the race at the moment, and Sepp Kuss. So who's missing there? Plapp and Bilbao, who is basically G2 at that moment, Group 2. And the gap was not significant. It was like 10 seconds, 15 seconds. But you know that if you get dropped at that point, that if Yates keeps up the tempo, then it's going to keep on increasing. And that's when that group with Kuss, Remco, and Yates catches up with the leftovers of the breakaway, which is Hesman, the Jumbo rider. And there we see the wonderful 10-second satellite rider pull by Michel Hesman. He takes his bottle, caps it over the head of Kuss. He's now refreshed and rejuvenated on the climb, Sepp Kuss. And then Michel Hesman says bye-bye, and he's gone forever. So wonderful domestique performance by Michel Hesman. GC Kuss is back, right?
He's back. He's back. Well,
And then he dropped.
Well, Tour de France is actually good with the lack of TTKs. But yeah, he did drop. Bouchard, I have no idea where he was. Plapp was not looking good. Bilbao was sort of behind him and then went ahead of him. They were yo-yoing, maybe attacking each other a little bit. Maybe Bilbao cost himself the podium eventually, kind of trying to work over Plapp. What was Remco's thought process here? You run me through, Benji.
Yeah.
Because he goes to the front. Pogacar the last year sits on Yates. Just waits, sits on him. It's up to Yates to make the race. Yates to take time for GC. Remco's got a stage to TT will count it. Why is Remco pulling here?
That's a good question. Now, you're saying the right things when it comes to last year. We know that Pogacar is the kind of rider that is like, well, I don't need to pull, so I'm just going to sit on the wheel for Adam Yates. He needs to take time on other riders if he wants to extend his lead on other riders, and he needs to somehow drop me, so he needs to keep on pushing to make it harder for me, so I can sit on the wheel. This time around, Remco Evenepoel rotates with Adam Yates, and I was at first like...
Not just rotates.
He
was the sole puller.
Yeah, for certain. I will say that Adam Yates was also pulling. Like, they were switching around. In my opinion, it wasn't like a solo pulling rotation. But I will say, when it comes to these two riders, Remco's probably thinking, oh, Plapp and Bilbao are my closest guys in GC. If I just keep up the tempo, then they're going to be further away in GC, and then I don't have to worry about them at the finish line. I can just keep up my own tempo. I also don't think he went in the red to keep on rotating.
Maybe. I think you're right. If Yates was at 9 seconds, he probably doesn't pull with him in the wheel, because then you're really leaving GC open. So Yates being so far away on GC, Remco said, the quicker we get to the finish line, I've got my nearest rivals off the back. I'm just going to ride my steady pace. If I ride my watts, Yates, whatever he does, he's not going to take enough time on GC. They're not going to come back and ride for GC. I don't know. I think he could have sat on Yates more. I think he pulled way too much. I don't know what. I think he put himself in a spot.
I think it's Remco that's like, he just can't not pace. It's in Remco's genes to pace whenever he's at the front of a race, right? I feel like he paces so much when it's not necessarily needed at the front of races. And this might have been an example where he's like, I'm at the front of the race, let's pace.
It's 38 degrees, and then Yates hits him with a second attack. I haven't seen a front-on shot of it. I presume Yates attacked from behind Remco, and it was before the flatter section, and he gets a really big gap on Remco. It was kind of, you said that's exactly where it attacked yesterday, Benji, and he did so, big gap. Now, it looks bad initially, but then there's the flatter section, which really suits Remco coming up.
But there's also the fact that Remco didn't try to follow. Like, it's not the kind of move where Remco was like, I'm just going to try and follow as long as possible when this attack happens. So maybe it's like the similar thing he did at Sierra Nevada, where the second that he felt like, I can't follow this tempo anyway, I'm going to let him go and try and do my own tempo for the last 2 kilometers, that I know that I won't lose a minute. Like, this is just how I'm imagining the mindset of Remco being in these final few kilometers, because he knows he won't lose GC if he just keeps up the tempo, and if he just doesn't capitulates in the same way that Pogacar does at the top of Granol, for example. So I think that was the focus. I think if he tried to follow, he could have lost a lot more time.
Maybe, yeah. And he didn't even try and respond. Just a very different style, I guess. TT riding. We saw TT guys fighting out behind, like Plapp came back to Bilbao. They were together. Koos came back and then dropped those guys, and then Bouchard came back to Plapp, dropped him in Bilbao, went to Koos, tried to drop Koos, did eventually drop Koos in the finish, so Bouchard's come from way back riding a steady tempo, not trying to follow Yates at all, and I think Koos probably cost himself following the 2 big guns, and Yates is gone. Remco limits the damage on that flatter section. He's in aero position going 40 kilometers an hour plus, and Yates is just, losing time there. But luckily for him, it kicks up again, and he's able to hold that gap and maybe extend it a little bit. Winning the stage, zipping the jersey up. 10 seconds ahead of Evenepoel and 42 seconds, big gap, ahead of Bouchard. Apparently, it's the new Hafit climbing record, which is pretty impressive.
Crazy.
That's thanks to, in hot conditions. I mean, it's always hot, to be honest, but super hot conditions, I think. Impressive from Adam Yates. It's why they signed him. Luckily for him, but sort of not luckily, Benji, he posts up for a while and he wins GC 3 seconds ahead of Bilbao because of bonus seconds and where Bilbao finished with Plapp.
Not win
he
GC.
loses out on second. Oh, podium by 3 seconds ahead of Bilbao. He misses out on second by a second.
Exactly.
Up.
If he didn't celebrate, he would have also crossed past Plapp in GC. I would have been second in the same way that he was last year and the year before. So would have been 3 times second in a row for Adam Yates. But that's not the case. He is now third in GC, which I don't know. I don't think Adam Yates cares about third or second, but UAE Prince might. But then again, they've got their stage win. They can try and celebrate that a bit,
Yeah, I think the stage win he said was more important in the interview afterwards, kind of like in the Vuelta 2021, where he seemed to think Jack Haig was 5 minutes ahead of him on GC, and he threw away the Vuelta podium chance by the way he rode on stage 20 when Lopez lost GC. Yeah, Yates didn't really seem to know his GC gaps again today. But yeah, wins the stage, impressive fashion. The final GC, in terms of the stage, Bilbao and Plapp coming together, 54 seconds down, Kuss on 47 seconds, then poles to Berry. Zwiehoff 9th on 125. Ooh. I really want to see a Zwiehoff Buchmann cam, and I don't know where, I think Buchmann was with him because Zwiehoff had to work as a domestique. I saw mostly this week, Benji. On Jebel Jais, he closed down the Soler attack with Tarling. But yeah, if Buchmann ain't riding for Hindley in the Giro, then he ain't riding for Zwiehoff here. GC, Remco wins, 59 seconds ahead of Plapp, 1 minute ahead of Yates, 103 ahead of Bilbao. GC Kuss lives, 206 in 5th. Let's go. Poles 6th, him and Jabari, as I said, 218, 233. Didn't know they were here. Who is the big, I wonder where Gloag, Gloag, Benji, he collapsed.
He collapsed. He was dropping before Adam Yates made his move when McNulty was still pacing, so he was not having the best day today. Maybe it's the temperatures because it's difficult with limited data points. We've seen 2 races of him on camera climbing. It was, I think, Andalusia? I'm not sure. Not Andalusia, Valenciana.
He wasn't even on camera on La Frontera because he was behind.
But now it's much hotter and so forth in this terrain, so maybe that fits him less. We don't know that. We might be able to see that if we see a few more races of data for him and so forth, and a few more years of data as well. But I'm still confident in Gloag's future. What he's done so far this year is pretty prominent, so I'm willing to let this one slide. But when it comes to the rest of the top 10, I would say that there's no real surprises in the sense that before this race started, Adam Yates was GC favorite for me as long as he would survive echelons, and well, he did not survive echelons, so that's why he was out of GC. Evenepoel being first is not a surprise as a consequence. Plapp doing better than Bilbao, I think that's a good light up point, whatever, I don't know English anymore, a good event in Plapp's resurgence, because I feel like towards the end of last year and at the start of this year, I wasn't overly confident in GC yet, while last year at the start of the year, I was confident in that. Does that make sense? Is it because I expected more from GC at the end of last year, Vuelta-wise or something, and he had to then work for the others and fell through very early in the race, and now we see that resurgence in these hot temperatures at the UAE Tour again? Or are you a real GC rider if you can only do it at UAE Tour?
Well, that's the thing. Bouchard, right? Super performance today, but these are very specific races. Like Thomas de Gent said, he's losing fitness in the bunch. The last 3 days have been interminable, real bad. I know sprint stages, if you tune in with 25, 50 Ks to go and watch, that's your own fault. But still, they're just in a straight line. And even with 5 Ks to go, nothing's really happening. So yeah, does this mean Plapp is going to go and do really well in a European race that's raced with multiple mountains, with harder efforts beforehand? We don't know. As I said, it's a very specific effort, like a time trial. It's a time trial effort on her feet. It's a time trial effort in the TTT. The crosswinds, he was damn strong, though. Like, much stronger than Yates, that's for sure. So it's encouraging. He's come second to the world champ Vuelta winner. He's been the best of the rest across the week of racing on the multiple terrain. As I say, was this the best race I've ever seen? Probably not. But Remco dropping, I mean, it's a shame Yates lost all that time in the crosswinds. Like, I don't feel sorry for him, but I mean, from a selfish perspective, if he was on 25 seconds from the TT or something, or 20 seconds, this would have been a cracker.
Yeah, I think so as well. But all in all, I do believe that it was still a fun race to watch, but definitely not more entertaining than last year's edition, where I did feel like there was still a battle for GC with Pogacar and Adam Yates on the final Jebel Hafid and so forth. Now, I think more entertaining races are coming. Strade is coming. Paris-Nice is coming. Paris-Nice, Jonas Vingegaard versus Pogacar. They're both looking good. Vingegaard at Gran Camino. But by the way, Gran Camino, did you see that drone footage? Yeah,
that stage was crazy.
But that was crazy.
They were right. The cliff had like a sheer drop off through like a right hand. It was crazy. Yeah, but Jonas is looking good. I can't wait for Paris-Nice. In terms of 2 questions, is Pog back at this race next year?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, I agree. Question 2, how do we feel about Remco preparing for the Giro? Box ticked? You saw what you needed to see?
Box ticked as in it's still a preparation race and he delivered the victory, but I don't think this says much for the Giro. I think the races that come closer to the Giro are supposed to say more about that, but we don't see him that much before the Giro. I think it's Catalunya that's the race that he rides beforehand, which is one of the final times we'll see him. So his real preparation for the Giro d'Italia has not really started completely yet. So we're going to see multiple training camps to come, I think, for Remco, like 2 of them after LBL and, well, before Catalunya and after LBL is my guess when it comes to their training camps. So I think he's going to get better from this point than he will need to compete in the Giro, but I'm honestly not too worried. But I'm also not overly confident yet.
Would it have been better for Remco to do Omloop? I wonder. Or for Ardèche?
I'm for Ardèche maybe, but I'd rather see him win UAE Tour. I don't know why. I feel like it's a higher level race on paper.
It's a GC race, yeah.
Than for Ardèche, and it also means consistency over multiple days. When it comes to Omloop, it would have been better for Quickstep probably, but in all fairness, I don't really.
And
I don't
TTT
mind
practice.
Yeah, I don't mind Remco not being at Cobble Classics.
Yeah. Okay. That was UAE Tour. We'll, as I said, have a Strade preview. We'll endeavor to have. I'll change to hear the lawyer coming back out. We will endeavor to have a Strade Bianca preview, Kerner little recap in next couple of days, as well as a Fourn Ardèche Jalab Godou clash of the French Titans. Thanks for listening to our UAE Tour coverage. Thanks to Zwift, as always. And yeah, we'll see you in the next one in the next couple of days. Ciao.